The shirt was light blue, some kind of fancy fabric I couldn't pronounce, silk blend maybe, or one of those new synthetic materials that cost more than my monthly electric bill. I'd folded it the same way I'd folded her clothes for 28 years, sleeves tucked in, smooth down the middle, creased at the sides. It looked fine to me, perfect even, certainly better than it would have looked crumpled in a heap. I was working my way through the basket methodically, the way I always did. Shirts first, then pants, then the smaller items. It was Saturday morning, just after 9. The coffee maker burbled in the corner. NPR played softly from the radio on the windowsill. I'd been retired for 14 months now, and I'd settled into this routine, helping Jessica and Derek with their laundry when they came by for weekend visits. It gave me something to do, made me feel useful, made me feel like I was still contributing something to my daughter's life. The house was quiet except for the domestic sounds, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant murmur of Derek's voice upstairs as he talked on the phone, the gentle whisper of fabric sliding against fabric as I folded. Peaceful, or at least it had been. Dad, what the hell is this? Before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe. And hit hype to boost this episode. Drop a comment below with your city or country. I'm always curious where viewers are joining from. Jessica's voice cracked through the quiet Saturday morning like a whip, like thunder on a clear day. I looked up from the laundry basket, startled to see my daughter storming into the kitchen. Her face was twisted with a fury that seemed wildly disproportionate to the piece of clothing dangling from her fingers. Her cheeks were flushed. Her eyes were blazing. She looked like I'd committed some unforgivable sin. "You folded my work shirts wrong again!" She threw the blouse onto the counter with such force it slid across the granite and nearly fell to the floor. "Do you ever do anything right?" My hands froze on the towel I'd been folding. The words hit me like a slap. I felt my face flush with embarrassment, with confusion, with the first stirrings of something that might have been anger if I'd let it be. "Jess, I folded them the same way I always—" "That's the problem, Dad." She grabbed the laundry basket, the one I'd been carefully organizing, and upended it. Just grabbed it and turned it over like a child having a tantrum. Clothes tumbled across my kitchen floor in a cascade of fabric and color. Her expensive Lululemon yoga pants that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. Her designer jeans with the little embroidered logo on the back pocket. Her delicate undergarments scattered like casualties of war across the tile I'd mopped just yesterday. "You're retired now. You literally have one job. Can you do anything right?" I stood there, 62 years old, my back aching from bending over the laundry basket for the past 30 minutes, watching my baby girl, the child I'd raised alone, the daughter I'd sacrificed everything for, the little girl who used to climb into my lap and tell me I was the best daddy in the whole world, sneer at me like I was hired help who'd disappointed her, like I was a servant who'd failed to meet her standards. Derek, her husband, appeared in the doorway. He was holding his phone, clearly having heard the commotion. Our eyes met across the chaos of scattered clothing. I saw discomfort there, maybe even guilt, but no surprise. No shock at his wife's behavior. He looked away immediately, studying the floor like it held the secrets of the universe, like if he stared hard enough he could disappear into it. "Jessica, I'm sorry," I managed, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be, smaller than it should have been. "I can refold them however you— Honestly, you're useless unless you're helping me." She kicked at a pile of clothes with her bare foot, scattering them further across the floor. Then she turned on her heel and stormed back upstairs, her footsteps heavy and angry on the wooden steps. The words hung in the air like smoke after a fire. Useless, unless I'm helping her. I stood there for a moment, frozen, my mind struggling to process what had just happened. Then I knelt down slowly, my knees creaking, a reminder that I wasn't young anymore, that I'd worked my body hard for decades and it was starting to show the wear. I began picking up her clothes from my kitchen floor, a cashmere sweater I didn't remember buying her, a silk camisole that probably cost more than my monthly water bill, a pair of leggings with mesh panels that looked like something from a high-end athletic catalog. My hands were shaking. I folded each item carefully, mechanically, my mind 1,000 miles away. Or maybe it was right there, trapped in that moment, replaying her words over and over. Ah, useless. Unless I'm helping me. The contempt in her voice, the disgust on her face, the casual cruelty of someone who'd never been denied anything they wanted. Derek hadn't moved from the doorway. I could feel him watching me, could sense his discomfort radiating across the room like heat from a fire. I'll refold everything," I said to no one in particular. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Distant, defeated. "Gerald, I'm sorry, she's just—" Derek started. "It's fine," I cut him off. Because what else was I supposed to say? That it wasn't fine? That my daughter had just humiliated me in my own home? That she'd treated me like garbage over something as trivial as folding laundry? Derek fled upstairs, and I was left alone with a pile of expensive clothes and the slowly growing realization that something fundamental had broken between my daughter and me, and I had no idea how to fix it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, watching the headlights from passing cars paint shadows across the walls, my mind replaying the scene on an endless loop. The look on her face, the contempt in her voice, the casual cruelty of someone who'd never learned that words have weight, that they can cut and bruise and leave scars that last longer than any physical wound. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized it wasn't just about today. This had been building for months, years maybe, a slow accumulation of small moments that I'd dismissed or excused or simply accepted because I didn't know what else to do. Last month, she'd called me while I was at the grocery store, asking me to pick up a few things for her. I'd tried to be helpful, had written down her list carefully, but when I arrived at her apartment with the bags, she'd unpacked them with increasing frustration, finally holding up a carton of coffee creamer like it was evidence in a criminal trial. "Dad, this isn't the right brand." "I thought you said French vanilla." "I said this brand of French vanilla. It's not that hard. I literally sent you a picture of the label." She'd pulled out her phone, showing me a photo of a nearly identical container. "See? This one, not whatever store brand you grabbed." I'd apologized, offered to go back and exchange it. She'd waved me off with a sigh of exasperation. "Never mind, I'll just use it. But next time, please actually look at what I send you." I'd left her apartment feeling small, feeling incompetent, feeling like I couldn't even buy coffee creamer correctly. 3 weeks ago, we'd been having lunch together, just the two of us. It had been nice, or I'd thought it was nice. She'd been telling me about work, about the new project she was leading, about her plans for the summer, and then she'd mentioned the Cabo trip, this all-inclusive resort that she and Derek were booking for their anniversary. "That sounds wonderful," I'd said, and I'd meant it. I wanted her to be happy, to have nice things, to enjoy her life. But then I'd made the mistake of adding, "Although with the economy the way it is, maybe you could do something local, save some money for the future." The change in her expression had been immediate and dramatic. The warm smile had vanished, replaced by something cold and defensive. "Oh my God, you're so out of touch." She'd set down her fork with a clatter. "Self-care isn't optional, Dad. Maybe your generation didn't understand mental health, but we do. We understand that experiences matter, that you can't just grind yourself into the ground without ever taking a break. I wasn't suggesting you grind yourself into the ground, This is why I don't talk to you about money stuff. You don't get it. You don't understand how stressful our lives are, how much we need these breaks to recharge." I'd backed off immediately, apologized for overstepping. We'd finished lunch in awkward silence, and I'd picked up the check like always, and she'd left without thanking me. Last week, I'd stopped by her apartment unannounced. Maybe that was my first mistake. With some old family photos I'd found while cleaning out my closet. I'd thought she might like to have them, might want to see pictures of herself as a baby, of her mother holding her in the hospital. But when I'd arrived, she'd been in the middle of rearranging her living room, and she'd barely glanced at the photos before setting them aside. "Can you help me move this couch?" she'd asked. "I'm trying to create better flow in here." I'd helped, of course. Moved the couch where she wanted it. Then moved it again when she decided the first spot didn't work. Then moved it a third time. My back had been screaming by the end, but I'd done it because she'd asked, because I wanted to help, because that's what fathers do. But nothing I'd done had been right. The couch was too far from the wall, too close to the TV. The angle was wrong. The feng shui was off. Finally, she'd sighed in frustration. "You don't understand my aesthetic, Dad. Never mind. I'll have Derek help me later." I'd left feeling dismissed, feeling obsolete, feeling like my help wasn't actually help at all, just another inconvenience she had to manage. When did my little girl become this person? When did helping her become insufficient? When did my presence become an inconvenience rather than a comfort? I sat up in bed at 2 a.m, my chest tight with a feeling I couldn't quite name. It wasn't just hurt, though I was hurt. It wasn't just anger, though there was anger there too, simmering beneath the surface. It was something bigger, something more complicated. A gnawing suspicion that something had fundamentally broken between us, that the relationship I thought we had, the close, loving father-daughter bond I'd worked so hard to maintain, was actually something else entirely. Something unhealthy and unbalanced and unsustainable. And worse, the slowly dawning realization that I was somehow responsible for breaking it, that I'd done this to her, to us, that somewhere along the way, I'd made terrible mistakes, and now we were both paying the price. The next morning, I found Derek in the garage. He was fiddling with a bicycle that had been broken for 6 months, the same bicycle he'd promised Jessica he'd fix countless times. The chain hung loose, the gears were rusted. It was clear he'd been avoiding the task, using it as a refuge, a place to hide when things got uncomfortable in the house. The garage smelled like motor oil and old cardboard. Dusty light filtered through the high window. Derek had his back to me, and I could see the tension in his shoulders, even from across the room. "Derek, can we talk?" He stiffened but didn't turn around. His hands stilled on the bike chain, but he didn't look at me. "Sure, Gerald. What's up?" I moved closer, stood a few feet away, giving him space, but making it clear I wasn't leaving. "Does she talk to you this way?" The silence that followed was so long and heavy, I thought he might not answer at all. I watched him struggle with it, saw his jaw clench, saw his knuckles turn white where they gripped the handlebars. "She's stressed with work," he finally said, his voice careful, measured, the words sounding rehearsed, like he'd said them to himself 1,000 times. "It's been a tough quarter. Her boss has been on her about the Reynolds account, and that's not what I asked." Derek set down his wrench with a soft clink. He still didn't turn to face me. "Gerald, Derek, I'm not trying to put you in a difficult position. I just need to understand if what happened yesterday is normal, if that's how she treats people when things don't go her way." He finally turned around. He looked exhausted. Not just tired from lack of sleep, but soul-tired, worn down by something he'd been carrying for too long. There were dark circles under his eyes, new lines around his mouth that I hadn't noticed before. He was only 30 years old, but in that moment, he looked older. "Look, she's—" He stopped, started again. "She's used to things being a certain way. She's used to being taken care of." The words hung between us. "By me, you mean?" He didn't deny it. He just stood there, this man I'd welcomed into our family 3 years ago. This man who I'd thought would be a good partner for my daughter. A man who was clearly struggling with something he couldn't or wouldn't name. He looked miserable. "I should get back to this," he mumbled, gesturing vaguely at the bicycle. But I wasn't done. I moved closer, lowered my voice. "How often does she talk to you the way she talked to me yesterday?" His face crumpled slightly. "It's not... She doesn't mean... How often, Derek?" "More lately," he admitted quietly. "Ever since we started talking about having kids. The pressure of the IVF, the costs, the stress of it all. She gets frustrated easily. And she takes it out on you." He shrugged, but I could see the admission in his eyes. "Marriage is compromise, right? You have to..." "No." My voice came out harder than I intended. Marriage is partnership, respect, communication, not one person being someone's emotional punching bag. Derek flinched. "She's not that bad. She has high standards. She knows what she wants." "And what about what you want? What about what's reasonable to expect from the people who love her?" He had no answer for that. He picked up the wrench again, turned back to the bike. I could see his hands shaking slightly. "Derek, I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Do you know where all her money comes from? Do you know how she affords everything?" His shoulders hunched. "She handles all our finances. I assumed she was good at budgeting. She makes decent money at her job, and she makes $68,000 a year." "Right, which is... Her apartment is $2,400 a month. That's $28,800 annually, just in rent, almost half her pre-tax income." Derek turned slowly, his face confused. "She told me it was $1,800. It's not. And her car payment is $100 or $200 monthly. That's another $1,400 a year." I watched the math play across his face, watched him try to make it work, watched the numbers refuse to add up. "I thought her parents left her something," he said weakly. "She always talked about having some family money." "Her mother died giving birth to her, Derek. There was no inheritance, no trust fund, no secret savings account passed down through generations. There was only me working myself to death to make sure she never had to struggle the way I did." "Jesus," Derek whispered. "Did you really not know? Or did you just not want to know?" He slumped against the workbench, and for a moment I thought he might cry. I guess I didn't ask the right questions. It was easier not to. When I suggested we look at our budget together, she'd get defensive, tell me she had it handled, and I let her, because the alternative was dealing with her anger. "So you've been enabling her, too." The words were harsh, but true. Derek nodded slowly, accepting the weight of them. "What do I do now?" he asked, and he sounded so young, so lost. "You stop walking on eggshells. You start being her partner instead of her subject. You start asking questions and expecting real answers. She'll be furious. Probably. She might... He stopped, couldn't finish the sentence. She might what? Leave you? Derek, if your marriage can't survive basic financial transparency and respectful communication, then it's already over. You're just going through the motions. He looked at me with such naked fear that I almost regretted being so blunt. Almost. I love her, he said softly. I know you do. I love her too. But love without boundaries isn't love. It's enabling. And we've both been enabling her for too long. Before Derek could respond, before I could say anything else, we heard footsteps on the stairs inside the house. What's going on? Jessica's voice cut through the moment. She appeared in the doorway connecting the garage to the house, wearing one of the shirts I'd folded wrong. Her hair was messy from sleep, her face still puffy, but her eyes were sharp, suspicious. She looked from Derek's guilty expression to my face and back again. Derek and I were just talking, I said calmly. About what? About bicycles, Derek lied, too quickly. Jessica's eyes narrowed. She knew something was happening, could sense the undercurrents even if she couldn't identify them. But instead of asking more questions, instead of engaging, she just shook her head. Whatever. Derek, I need you to help me with something upstairs. It wasn't a request. It was a command. Derek looked at me one more time, an apology in his eyes, a plea for understanding, and then followed his wife inside. I stood alone in the garage, surrounded by the detritus of a life half-lived, and knew with absolute certainty what I had to do. This ended today. At 2 a.m. that night, I found myself in my home office, unable to sleep for the second night in a row. The house was silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway, the one my own father had given me when I graduated college, the one I'd nearly sold a dozen times over the years when money was tight but couldn't bring myself to part with. It had watched over every milestone of Jessica's life, her first steps, her first day of school, her high school graduation, her wedding, and now this. I opened the filing cabinet in the corner, the one I always kept locked, the one Jessica had never asked about, and pulled out a thick folder labeled Jessica Support in my own handwriting. The folder was heavier than I remembered, bloated with papers and receipts and statements I'd been accumulating for years. I'd been keeping records, not because I expected her to pay me back. I'd never thought of it that way, had never imagined asking for repayment. I did it because I needed to track it all for my own financial planning, needed to make sure I wasn't spending myself into disaster, needed to see the numbers in black and white so I could make informed decisions about my own future. Now, as I spread the documents across my desk in the pool of light from my reading lamp, the full scope of what I'd been doing hit me like a freight train. The first stack, automatic payment confirmations to her landlord. I'd set it up through my bank's bill pay system 18 months ago when she'd called me in tears, saying she'd miscalculated her budget and couldn't make rent. Just this once, she'd said, just until I get back on my feet. I'd set up the automatic payment thinking it would be temporary, that she'd take it over after a month or two. That was $2,400 per month, for 14 months since we'd had that conversation. I did the math on my calculator, $33,600, enough to buy a decent used car, enough for a year of community college, enough to live on for nearly a year if you were careful. Gone. The next stack made my stomach turn, the credit card statement from last year. She'd called me in tears, real tears, the kind that broke my heart, the kind that made me want to fix everything immediately. She'd made a mistake, she'd said. She'd gone on a shopping trip with her friends, had gotten caught up in the moment, had splurged on things she shouldn't have. The minimum payment was more than she could afford, and if she missed it, her credit score would tank. Dad, I've learned my lesson, she'd said, her voice small and ashamed. I promise I'll never do this again. Can you help me this one time? I'll pay you back, I swear. $8,600 to bail her out. I'd withdrawn it from my savings account, the one I'd been slowly building back up after paying for her wedding. She'd promised to pay me back at $500 a month. That was 11 months ago. I'd never seen a dime. And according to her Instagram posts, she hadn't learned any lessons about spending. Car payment statements, a stack of them, neat and organized in chronological order, her luxury SUV with the heated leather seats, the panoramic sunroof, the premium sound system. The one she'd insisted she needed because her old car, a perfectly functional 5-year-old sedan, was embarrassing and didn't reflect her professional image. I'm moving up in my career, Dad, she'd told me. I need to look the part. You understand, right? It's an investment in my future. I'd co-signed because she couldn't get approved for the loan on her own. Then, 6 months in, when she'd confessed she was struggling with the payments, I'd quietly taken them over. Just for a few months, she'd said. That was 19 months ago. $200 per month for 19 months. I wrote it down. $22,800. Car insurance, $340 monthly for the same 19 months. I added it up. $6,460 student loan interest payments. This one was particularly galling because I'd already paid for her college education. 4 years at a state university, tuition and room and board, books and fees. I'd thought that was it, that she'd graduate debt-free, that I'd given her the gift of starting adult life without that burden. But she'd taken out loans anyway. For living expenses, she'd said. For study abroad opportunities, and professional development courses, and networking events. Loans I hadn't known about until after graduation, when she'd come to me crying about the monthly payments. I can't afford both the principal and the interest, she'd said. If you could just cover the interest payments, I'll handle the principal. That way I'm still being responsible, still paying my own way. Except as far as I could tell from my records, she'd never paid a cent toward that principal. $520 monthly for the interest alone for 2 years. I calculated $12,180, medical bills from her emergency appendectomy last year. She'd had decent insurance through her job, but there were still out-of-pocket costs, deductibles and co-pays and the ambulance ride and the specialist fees. I'd paid them all without hesitation because she was my daughter and she was in pain, and you don't think about money when your child is in the hospital. $4,200. I'll pay you back when I get my tax refund, she'd said. The tax refund had apparently gone to her Cabo vacation. And then the big one, the one I could barely stand to look at. The cashier's check I'd written just last month, withdrawing a massive chunk of my retirement savings, money I'd been carefully hoarding for my own future security, for the day when I might need assisted living or in-home care or medication I couldn't afford on my pension alone. $29,000 for her IVF treatment. She'd come to me on a Sunday afternoon, tears streaming down her face. Derek had been with her, looking uncomfortable but saying nothing. They'd been trying to get pregnant for a year, she'd said. They'd done all the tests, tried all the natural methods. They needed IVF. It was their only hope. But their insurance wouldn't cover it, and they didn't have the money saved. Dad, you're our only hope, she'd said. And how was I supposed to say no to that? How was I supposed to deny my daughter the chance to become a mother? To deny myself the chance to be a grandfather? So I'd written the check, wiped out a quarter of my retirement savings in one pen stroke, and I'd felt good about it in the moment. Felt like I was doing the right thing, the generous thing, the fatherly thing. Nay, looking at the canceled check in the folder, all I felt was sick. I pulled out a calculator and started adding. Then I pulled up my bank statements and credit card records, searching for all the other things I'd half forgotten. The emergency transfers when her checking account overdrew. The small loans that were never repaid, the bailouts and helpouts and just this onces that had somehow become routine. $300 here for a vet bill when her cat got sick. $500 there when her car needed unexpected repairs. How did a nearly new luxury SUV need so many repairs? $150 for concert tickets she'd already bought before realizing she couldn't afford them. $800 to help with Derek's credit card bill so they could start fresh. $1,000 for new furniture when she decided her living room needed updating. Small amounts individually, but they added up. God, they added up. The total came to $132,140. I stared at that number for a long time. $132,140 in 2 years, $63,000 per year, more than I'd ever made in a single year until I was 50 years old, more than some families lived on. Gone. I sat back in my chair, feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. Then, because I'm apparently a glutton for punishment, because I needed to see the full picture of what I'd created, I opened my laptop and navigated to Jessica's Instagram. The first image that loaded was from 3 weeks ago. Jessica beaming in front of a high-end boutique, holding multiple shopping bags with designer logos. Her caption read, "Treated myself. Self-care isn't selfish. It is also self-love. Chaque you deserve it. Self-walk a boss babe." I recognized one of those bags. I'd seen the charge on the credit card statement I'd paid off. $400 at a store I'd never heard of for a purse she'd worn exactly once. I scrolled down. More images loaded, each one a dagger. Poolside in Cabo, cocktail in hand, sunset painting the sky behind her. Living my best life. Fresh, blessed, independent woman travel goals. Her luxury SUV, freshly detailed and gleaming in the afternoon sun. She's a beauty. Finally got her detailed. Car goals. naroj, girl boss, char self-made, chuck earned not given. A fancy brunch spread, avocado toast, mimosas, artfully arranged fruit, Sunday fun day with my girls, shao, brunch, chow living my best life, grateful, an expensive gym in matching designer workout clothes. Investing in my health, new gym, new goals, new me. Your fitness journey, shao, self-investment, shao, be worth it. Self-made, independent woman, earned not given. Every single thing in those photos, the shopping bags, the vacation, the car, the brunch, the gym membership, the clothes, was funded by me, and she had no idea. She genuinely believed she was doing it all herself. She'd convinced herself, and everyone who followed her, that she was successful and independent and self-sufficient. She was living a lie. And I had enabled that lie. I had funded it. I had made it possible for her to pretend she was something she wasn't. The comments on her posts made it worse. You're such an inspiration. Living your best life. Girl boss, you're killing it. Goals. How do you do it all? And Jessica's responses, just hard work and determination. You have to prioritize yourself. Make it happen. Don't make excuses. I felt nauseated. This was my fault. I'd created this monster. I'd taught her that money appeared magically, that bills paid themselves, that there were no real consequences to spending beyond your means. I opened a new spreadsheet and began typing, my fingers moving almost automatically. Dates, amounts, descriptions, categories. I color-coded everything, red for housing, blue for vehicle, green for bailouts, yellow for medical, purple for the IVF fund. I printed everything. Bank statements going back 2 years, transfer confirmations with my signature, receipts I'd saved, invoices I'd paid. The pile grew. Each piece of paper was evidence, proof. Undeniable documentation of a pattern I could no longer ignore. And then I did something I'd been thinking about since yesterday afternoon when my daughter had dumped her laundry on my kitchen floor and called me useless. Something I'd been avoiding, even considering, because it felt cruel, felt harsh, felt like giving up. But it wasn't giving up. It was something else. Something I should have done years ago. I logged into my bank account and navigated to the automatic payments section, found the transfer to her landlord. My cursor hovered over the cancel button. My hand trembled. I thought about everything that would happen when I clicked that button. The panic when her rent didn't get paid, the late fees, the possibility of eviction, the chaos it would create in her carefully curated life. Then I thought about holding her in the hospital just hours after my wife had died, bringing her into this world. The nurse had placed this tiny, red-faced, screaming bundle in my arms, and I'd looked down at her and made a silent promise. I'll always take care of you. I'll never let you struggle. I'll give you everything I never had. I'd kept that promise. For 28 years, I'd kept it. Sometimes to my own detriment. Sometimes when it hurt. Sometimes when I had to work 3 jobs and sleep 4 hours a night. I'd kept it, but maybe the promise was wrong. Maybe taking care of her didn't mean protecting her from every struggle. Maybe giving her everything I never had included struggles I'd endured. The struggles that had made me strong, that had taught me the value of money and work and sacrifice. Then I thought about yesterday. The clothes scattered on my floor, the contempt in her eyes. Her voice, "You're useless unless you're helping me." I clicked confirm. A message appeared. "Are you sure you want to cancel this recurring payment?" I clicked yes. Payment canceled. Changes will take effect after the next scheduled payment on November 1st. I moved to the next automatic payment. The car payment. Clicked cancel, confirmed. The insurance payment, cancel, confirm. One by one, I dismantled the support system I'd built around her life. Each click felt like cutting a cord. Each confirmation was final, irrevocable. I drafted an email to the fertility clinic requesting a refund of my IVF deposit. My fingers hesitated on the keyboard for a long time before I finally typed, "Due to unforeseen circumstances, my daughter and son-in-law will no longer be able to proceed with treatment at this time. Please process a full refund of my deposit to the account on file. Thank you for your understanding." I didn't send it yet. That one needed more thought. That one would hurt the most. Finally, I removed myself as an authorized user on her credit cards. Removed my name from her accounts. Cut every financial tie except for the email to the clinic, which I saved as a draft. I printed all the cancellation confirmations and added them to the growing stack of papers. Then I stood up, gathered everything, the neat packets of evidence, the spreadsheet, the printouts, the receipts, and carried it all downstairs to the kitchen. My arms were full. The papers felt heavier than they should have, weighted with meaning, with consequence, with the ending of something and the beginning of something else. I laid it all out on the kitchen table in organized packets, 6 main stacks, each labeled with a sticky note in my careful handwriting. Housing costs, vehicle expenses, credit card bailouts, medical and insurance IVF treatment fund miscellaneous bailouts. And one final packet, the synthesis of everything, the complete breakdown. I made coffee in the pre-dawn darkness. The familiar ritual was soothing, measuring the grounds, pouring the water, listening to the machine gurgle and hiss. I sat down at the table surrounded by the evidence of my complicity in my daughter's financial fantasy and waited. Waited for my daughter's world to end, waited for mine to begin again. Derek came downstairs first, at 7 a.m. He was halfway to the coffee maker when he saw the documents spread across the table. He froze mid-step. What? What is all this? The truth, I said quietly. Sit down. Maybe I should get Jessica. No. You first. Look at these. He sat. Slowly, like a man approaching a rattlesnake, he reached for the first packet. I watched his face as he flipped through the pages, watched the color drain from his cheeks, watched his hands begin to shake. I knew you helped with some stuff, but his voice trailed off. Some stuff? This is $132,000 in 2 years, Derek. He set the papers down like they'd burned him. She works hard. She makes $68,000 a year. Her expenses total over $150,000 annually. Where did she think the difference came from? Silence. The kind of silence that answers every question. You knew, didn't you? I said. You both knew. Maybe not the amounts, maybe not every detail, but you knew someone was funding the gap between her income and her lifestyle. Derek's face crumpled. We don't really talk about money. Jessica handles all that. I just assumed. I thought maybe her mom left her something, or... Her mother died giving birth to her, Derek. There was no inheritance, no trust fund, no secret savings account. There was only me, working myself to death to make sure she never had to struggle the way I did. Jesus, Derek whispered. What's going on? We both turned. Jessica stood in the kitchen doorway, wearing one of the shirts I'd folded wrong. Her hair was messy, her face still puffy from sleep. She looked so young in that moment, so much like the little girl who used to crawl into my bed after nightmares, who used to hold my hand crossing the street, who used to think I hung the moon. Sit down, Jessica. Something in my voice must have frightened her because she didn't argue. She moved to the table and sat down slowly, her eyes moving from the documents to Derek's stricken face to my carefully neutral expression. Dad, what? I slid the first packet across the table. Read it. She picked it up, confused. I watched her eyes scan the first page, then the second, then the third. Watched confusion turn to shock, turn to something like horror. Why do you have my rent payment confirmations? Her voice was small now, uncertain. Because I'm the one who's been paying your rent, Jessica. For 14 months. What? No, that comes out of my account automatically. Yes, after I transfer the money into your account. Every month, on the 1st. I slid the second packet across. Your car. She stared at it like it might bite her. I pay my car payment. Look at the account name on those statements. She did. I watched her read my name. Gerald Morrison. Payment source, Gerald Morrison. But I thought... She looked up at me, tears already forming in her eyes. Dad, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you notice? I slid across the credit card bailout, the medical bills, the IVF fund. One by one, I laid her life bare in front of her. Her hands shook as she read. The tears came faster. By the time she got to the IVF packet, saw that $29,000 figure, she was crying openly. The IVF? You said you wanted to help with that. I did. I do. My voice cracked. But did you ever wonder how a retired man on a pension had $29,000 to give you? She couldn't answer. She just sat there, crying, paper scattered around her like evidence at a crime scene. I slid the final packet across. The complete breakdown, the color-coded spreadsheet with every transaction, every amount, every date. Do you want me to read it to you? I asked. Or can you see it clearly enough? She shook her head, unable to speak, so I read it aloud anyway. Housing, $33,600. Vehicle, $29,260. Credit card bailout, $8,600. Medical, $4,200. Student loan interest, $12,480. IVF treatment fund, $29,000. Emergency transfers and various loans, $15,000. I paused, let the numbers sink in. $132,140 in 2 years. Jessica's sob was the sound of something breaking. Derek reached for her hand, but she pulled away, burying her face in her arms on the table. "Do you know what I did to get that money?" I asked quietly. She shook her head, shoulders heaving. "When your mother died, I was 34 years old with a newborn baby and $47,000 in medical debt. Do you know how I paid that off while keeping you fed and clothed and housed?" She looked up at me, mascara running down her face, and shook her head again. "I worked as a warehouse manager during the day. I drove Uber at night. I delivered pizzas on weekends. I slept 4 hours a night for 6 years straight, Jessica. 6 years. I kept that schedule until you started school and I could drop the pizza job." Her hand went to her mouth. "I saved for your college for 18 years. Every tax return, every bonus, every overtime shift, every penny I could scrape together went into your education fund. Do you know what I did for vacation during those 18 years? Silence. "Nothing. I took off 3 days when you graduated high school. That was it. No trips, no hotels, no restaurants. Because you were my priority. You were everything." I pulled out my phone and opened her Instagram. I turned the screen toward her. "Read your posts, Jessica. Read them out loud." "Dad, please." "Read them." Her voice broke as she read. "Self-made and loving it." A pause. "No one handed me anything. I worked for this." Another pause, longer this time. "Independent woman, independent life." I took the phone back. "Every designer bag in these photos? I paid for it. Every brunch, every vacation, every luxury you've posted about, my money, my work, my sacrifices that you were too self-absorbed to notice." "I didn't know," she sobbed. "I didn't know, Dad, I swear." "You didn't want to know. That's the difference." I picked up the shirt from yesterday, the one that had started all of this, from where I'd left it folded on the counter. "This is what broke me," I said, holding it up. "Not because of how I folded it, because of what it represented." Jessica looked at me, tears streaming down her face. "For 28 years, I've been folding your life, smoothing out every wrinkle, making everything neat and perfect for you. And yesterday, you threw it in my face. Literally. You threw your clothes on the floor and called me useless." "Dad, I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did. You meant every word, because you've never had to fold your own life, Jessica. You don't know how." I sat down heavily, suddenly exhausted. "And that's my fault. I did this to you." "No, Dad. I made you this way. I made you entitled by never letting you struggle, never letting you fail, never letting you see the real cost of anything." My voice broke. "I thought I was being a good father. I thought protecting you from hardship was love, but I didn't protect you. I crippled you." "Please don't say that." For the first time in years, I let myself cry in front of my daughter. My baby girl doesn't know how to stand on her own, and it's my fault. Through my tears, I saw her face, devastated, guilty, lost. She looked like she had when she was 5 and had accidentally broken my favorite mug. Except this time, what was broken was so much bigger than ceramic. I slid the final packet across the table. "These are cancellation confirmations." Her eyes widened as she read. Every automatic payment, every transfer, every support system I'd built around her life. Canceled. "Dad, no, you can't." "I already did. This morning at 6 a.m. "Jesus Christ, Gerald." Derek stood up so fast his chair tipped over. "Dad, please. I have rent due in 4 days. I can't." "You make $68,000 a year, Jessica. That's more than I made until I was 45 years old." "But with my expenses?" "Exactly. Your expenses are the problem." I pulled out one more sheet, one I'd made last night while I couldn't sleep. An analysis of her actual spending habits, compiled from the bank statements I'd seen over the years. Rent, $2,400, too expensive for your income. You should be spending no more than $1,700. Car payment, $1,200 monthly. You bought a luxury SUV you couldn't afford. Shopping, averaging $800 to $1,200 per month. Dining out, $600 to $900 per month. Subscription services, $340 per month. Gym, streaming platforms, beauty boxes, wine clubs. Do you even use all of these? She couldn't answer. Vacations, over $6,000 annually. You spend like someone making $150,000, Jessica. You earn $68,000. You've been living a lie. "But I work hard," she protested. I worked hard too. I worked harder than you can imagine. And I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment until you went to college. I drove a 1998 Toyota until it literally died on the highway. I ate ramen 3 times a week so you could have fresh vegetables. Don't talk to me about deserving things because you work hard." The silence that fell was absolute. Even the house seemed to be holding its breath. What am I supposed to do? Jessica's voice was barely a whisper. What everyone else does. Budget, sacrifice, adjust your lifestyle to match your income. What about the IVF? Derek asked, his voice hollow. We've been planning. This one hurt. God, this one hurt worse than all the others combined. I know, and it kills me, but I can't fund a baby when you can't even fund yourselves. Jessica's breakdown was total. Her head dropped to the table, her sobs so violent I could see her whole body shaking. Derek stood frozen, one hand hovering near her shoulder, not quite touching. I stayed seated. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to comfort her, to take it all back, to tell her it would be okay. But I didn't. I let the weight of reality settle on her shoulders, let her feel what I'd been carrying for 28 years. After several long minutes, Jessica lifted her head. Her face was blotchy and swollen, but there was something new in her eyes, something I hadn't seen in years. Why are you doing this? She asked. Because I love you too much to watch you become this person. What person? Someone who treats people who love them with contempt. Someone who thinks they're owed everything. Someone who's cruel when they don't get their way. I'm not cruel. Yesterday you called me useless. Last month you told your friends I was embarrassing because I didn't understand cryptocurrency. 3 weeks ago, when I suggested you save money instead of going to Cabo, you mocked me in front of Derek. You laughed at me for trying to help you. She had no defense. I could see the memories playing across her face, see her recognizing herself in my words and being horrified by what she saw. She does talk down to people sometimes, Derek said quietly. Jessica's head whipped toward him. Derek. It's true, Jess. For the first time since I'd known him, Derek showed some backbone. You do. And I've been too scared to say anything because I didn't want to deal with the fallout. But he's right. Thank you for being honest, I told him. I turned back to Jessica. Do you remember when you failed that chemistry class in college? She nodded slowly. I paid for you to retake it. Remember when you crashed your car when you were 17? Another nod. I bought you a new one, better than the one you'd wrecked. Remember when you quit those 3 jobs because they were beneath you? Dad, I covered the gaps. Every time. And when you maxed out those credit cards last year, who paid them off? You did, she whispered. I taught you that nothing has a cost, that someone will always clean up your messes, that there are no consequences for bad decisions because Daddy will fix everything. I leaned forward. But I'm not helping you anymore. I'm parenting you, 20 years too late. The rest of that day was the longest of my life. Jessica stayed in her old bedroom with the door closed. I could hear her crying through the walls. Derek sat in the living room, staring at nothing, his whole worldview clearly shattered. Around dinner time, I knocked on her door. Jessica, you need to eat something? No answer. I made soup. It's on the stove. Still nothing. I went back downstairs, ladled some soup into a bowl, and left it outside her door. It was still there, cold, when I went to bed. She emerged the next morning, laptop clutched to her chest, eyes swollen but determined. I'm going to make this work, she announced. I looked up from my coffee. I know you will. She sat down at the table and opened her laptop. I'm looking at apartments, smaller places, within my actual budget. Something in my chest loosened slightly. That's smart. I'll have to sell my car, get something used. Lots of people drive used cars. They're just as reliable. She was typing furiously, making notes. Cancel the gym membership. I can run outside, cancel all the subscription boxes, start cooking at home, meal prep on Sundays like my friend Kara does. I watched her work, this stranger who looked like my daughter but was acting like an adult for the first time in years. Dad? She looked up, fear naked on her face. What if I can't do the IVF now? This was the moment, the place where I could swoop in, fix it, make it all better. That instinct was so strong it was physical, a pressure in my chest, a tightness in my throat. Then you wait, I said instead. You save. You do it when you're actually ready. I'm 28. I wanted to start our family. And you will. But families are built on stable foundations, Jessica, not on your father's money. She nodded slowly, tears sliding down her cheeks. But she didn't argue. She just turned back to her laptop and kept searching for apartments she could actually afford. The next few weeks were brutal to watch. Jessica moved to a 1-bedroom apartment in a less trendy neighborhood. The rent was $1,400 instead of $2,400. She cried while packing, kept stopping to stare at her things like she was mourning them. Derek and I loaded the moving truck. No professional movers this time, just us and some boxes and the weight of a life being downsized. She really loved that place, Derek said, carrying a lamp past me. She loved what it represented, I corrected. She'll love this new place more once she realizes she's actually paying for it herself. He didn't look convinced. The car went next. She listed her luxury SUV online and bought a 2016 Honda Civic with the difference. When she handed over the keys to her SUV, she stood in the parking lot and cried so hard I almost caved. Almost went over and told her it was okay, I'd keep paying, she could keep her nice things. But I didn't. I watched from my car as Derek held her while she grieved for a vehicle she'd never actually owned, not really, not in any way that mattered. That night she called me. I did it, she said. Her voice was raw. I bought a car with my own money. It's mine. Actually mine. How does it feel? A long pause. Then? Terrifying. But also, kind of good? That's exactly right. Week 3, she called me at 11 p.m., crying so hard I could barely understand her. I can't do this, she sobbed. Dad, I can't. It's too hard. I was in my car within minutes, driving to her new apartment. She answered the door in pajamas, eyes red, looking more exhausted than I'd ever seen her. We sat on her apartment floor. She didn't have much furniture yet, and I let her cry. I'm so tired, she finally managed. I work all day, and then I come home and I have to cook and clean and budget and figure out bills, and when does it get easier? It doesn't get easier, I told her honestly. You get stronger. She laughed bitterly. That's not very encouraging. I know, but it's the truth. You asked me to tell you the truth, remember? She wiped her eyes. I see my friends posting their brunch photos and their shopping hauls, and I feel like such a failure. Do you know what they're not posting? She looked at me. Their credit card debt, their anxiety, their parents' money. Her eyes widened. You think they're like you were? She asked. I think very few people are as successful as they look online, Jessica. I think everyone's struggling in ways they don't show. She was quiet for a moment. Then, did you ever feel like this? When I was little? Every single day. The memory hit me hard. Some nights I'd sit in my car after my shift ended and just cry. I was too exhausted to drive home, too overwhelmed to face one more thing. I never knew. That's because I never wanted you to carry my burden? I took her hand. But maybe that was wrong. Maybe you needed to see what things really cost. Maybe I should have let you struggle sooner, when the stakes were lower. She squeezed my hand. Maybe we both made mistakes. Maybe. We sat there for a while in comfortable silence. Then she leaned against my shoulder, and I wrapped my arm around her, and for the first time in months, she felt like my daughter again. I'm sorry I said you were useless, she whispered. I'm sorry for how I treated you. I'm so sorry, Dad. I know, and I forgive you. Thank you for not letting me keep being that person. I kissed the top of her head. That's what parents do, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Month 2 brought visible changes. Jessica paid her rent on time, from her own account, and texted me a screenshot of the payment confirmation with a string of celebration emojis. She grocery shopped with coupons clipped from the Sunday paper. She actually read her bank statements. Her emergency fund grew, $800, then $1,600, then $12,400. One evening she called, excited. Dad, my friend Sarah was complaining about money, and I actually helped her make a budget. And it worked. She's saving $300 a month now. I smiled at the pride in her voice. That's wonderful, Jess. I never thought I'd be the person giving financial advice, she laughed. But it felt good, like I actually know something valuable. You do. At work, her boss noticed the change. More focus, more maturity, more confidence. She asked for a raise, the first time she'd ever negotiated for herself, and got it. $5,000 more per year. She called me immediately. I did it. I asked for what I was worth, and she said yes. I'm so proud of you. I'm putting half toward my emergency fund and half toward the IVF savings, she said, and I heard the excitement in her voice. Not resentment, not bitterness, actual excitement about saving her own money for her own goal. I cried after we hung up, big, ugly, grateful tears. Month 4, Jessica invited me to dinner at her apartment. When I arrived, I was struck by the changes. Her place looked like a home now, not a showroom. Thrift store finds mixed with the nice pieces she'd kept, photos on the walls, family pictures, memories, a bookshelf she'd built herself from a YouTube tutorial, plants on the windowsill, actually alive and thriving. You did all this? I asked. She beamed. Derek and I spent last weekend at estate sales. Look at this lamp. $8, and it works perfectly. Derek greeted me at the door with genuine warmth, none of the avoidance from before. Good to see you, Gerald. Come on in. Dinner's almost ready. Dinner was simple, but good. Roasted chicken, vegetables, rice. Nothing fancy, but she'd cooked it herself, and she was proud. After we ate, she brought out a folder. I want to show you something. My heart clenched, worried she was about to ask for money, but she didn't. She opened the folder and showed me a spreadsheet, one she'd made herself, detailed and organized. 4 months of expenses, tracked meticulously. A savings account statement showing $4,200. Her car, paid off. Her credit score, improved by 60 points. Her debt reduced to just student loans. I wanted you to see, she said softly. I wanted you to know that I'm doing it. I'm actually doing it. My vision blurred with tears. I never doubted you could. I just needed you to believe it. She handed me an envelope. I wrote you something. You don't have to read it now, but I needed to say some things. I opened it later that night at home. 3 pages, handwritten, tear-stained. She apologized for every cruel thing she'd said, listed them specifically, owned them fully. She thanked me for every sacrifice I'd made, acknowledged what I'd given up for her, and she promised to be better, to teach her future children what real independence meant, to break the cycle of entitlement before it could start again. At the bottom, she'd written, "You loved me enough to let me struggle. That's the truest kind of love. Thank you for being brave enough to hurt me in order to save me. I love you, Dad. Always." I called her immediately. "Did you read it?" she asked nervously. "Every word. And I'm proud of you, Jessica. So incredibly proud." She was crying now. "Will you tell me about Mom? Really tell me? Not the sanitized version for a kid, but the truth?" So I did. I told her how her mother had been terrified of childbirth, how she'd made me promise to take care of our baby no matter what, how her last words, whispered while they were wheeling her to emergency surgery, were, "Love her enough for both of us." "I've carried that promise for 28 years, I told her. Sometimes I carried it wrong, sometimes I loved you too much, protected you too much, but I was trying to honor your mother's last wish." "You did, Dad," Jessica said, her voice thick with tears. "You loved me enough, more than enough. But I loved you the wrong way for a while. You were grieving and trying your best. I forgive you, and I'm grateful for all of it, even the hard parts, especially the hard parts." 6 months after the laundry incident, we'd settled into a new normal. Sunday lunches became our tradition, nothing fancy, just time together. Real conversations, not the surface-level updates from before. One Sunday, over sandwiches at a modest cafe she'd discovered, Jessica told me about a promotion she was up for at work. "I'm leading the whole project," she said, eyes bright. "My boss said she's never seen me this confident." "Because you are confident. You're not pretending anymore." She smiled. "It's easier to be confident when you're not living a lie." Then she asked about my weekend, and I told her something I'd been nervous to share. "I've been seeing someone." Her face lit up. "Dad! That's amazing. Tell me everything." "Her name is Patricia. We met at the library. She's a retired teacher." "It's about time," Jessica said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "You deserve to have someone, Dad. You've been alone for so long." "I wasn't alone. I had you. You know what I mean. You deserve romance, partnership, someone to fold laundry with." We both laughed at that, and it felt good. The wound had become a scar, still there, still visible, but no longer painful. Month 7 brought an unexpected phone call. Jessica's voice was shaking, but not with tears this time. "Dad, can you come over? I have something to show you." When I arrived, she and Derek were sitting on the couch, holding hands, both of them looking nervous and excited. "What's going on?" Jessica opened her laptop and turned it toward me, a spreadsheet, color-coded and detailed. "Derek and I have been saving," she said, aggressively. "He took on consulting work on weekends. I've been doing freelance projects after work. We've cut every unnecessary expense." I looked at the numbers, watched the savings column grow week by week. "We have $18,000 saved for IVF," she continued. "We'll have the full amount in 8 more months." "That's incredible." "But that's not what I wanted to show you." She switched to another tab. "Look at this." It was another savings account, one I didn't recognize. "What is this?" We're saving to pay you back, Derek said. For everything. You don't have to. Yes, we do, Jessica interrupted. We absolutely do. It'll take us a while, probably 5 years at this rate, but we're going to do it. Every dollar. I couldn't speak. My throat had closed up completely. We know we can't give you back the years of sacrifice, she continued. We can't give you back your sleep or your health or the time you spent working yourself to death for me, but we can at least return the money, with interest. I don't need... We know, but we do. We need to do this, Dad. Please let us. I looked at these two people, my daughter and her husband, who had grown more in 7 months than in the previous 7 years, who had learned what things cost and decided to pay their debts anyway, even though I'd never asked. Okay, I said. Thank you. Jessica stood up and hugged me, and I held her tight, marveling at how different she felt. Stronger, steadier, real. I'm sorry it took me so long to grow up, she whispered. I'm sorry you had to be the bad guy to make it happen. I'm not sorry, I told her. Not anymore. A year after the laundry incident, Jessica and Derek moved into a house they'd bought themselves. Nothing extravagant, a modest 3-bedroom in a family-friendly neighborhood, but it was theirs, purchased with money they'd saved and earned. The moving day was different from the last one. No tears this time. Just excitement and pride and boxes labeled in Jessica's neat handwriting. I helped them unpack, and at one point Jessica called me into what would be the nursery. Look, she said, showing me her phone. It was a payment confirmation. The full amount for IVF, paid in full from their savings account. We're starting the process next month, she said, tears in her eyes. And we're doing it ourselves. No help, no bailouts, just us. I'm so happy for you, I said, and I meant it with every fiber of my being. She hugged me tight. When we have this baby, when I'm up at 3 a.m., exhausted and overwhelmed and wondering what we've gotten ourselves into, I'm going to remember what you did for me, how hard you worked, how much you sacrificed. You'll do it differently, though. She pulled back, looked me in the eye. Yes, I'll let them struggle a little. I'll let them fail sometimes. I'll teach them what things cost and make them earn what they want, because that's what made me who I am now. Not the helping, the stopping. You're going to be an amazing mother. I learned from the best, she said, then with a mischievous smile, even if he can't fold laundry the right way. We both laughed, and I grabbed a dish towel from one of the boxes and threw it at her. How's this for folding? She threw it back. Terrible. Absolutely terrible. And we laughed until we cried, surrounded by boxes and possibility, and a future neither of us could have imagined that day in my kitchen, when everything fell apart so it could come back together stronger,